Yes. Just just roll the footage. Yes. Today we're going to talk about what are the 7 things that you can focus on to turn yourself into a media buyer who can make over $100,000 part-time from a laptop anywhere in the world. I'm here at Krispy Kreme, and this place creates joy. And look at this. It's a conveyor belt that produces happiness. And really that's what we're kind of talking about today. What is the known process to take raw material and turn it into joy and happiness? And in this case, well, they're making sugar and filling bellies, and honestly, we can be making money and filling your bank account. Today, we're spilling some secrets, and I'm stoked to share this with you. So, yeah, let's go back to Disruptor HQ, and full disclosure, I had more than one donut today, and I'm gonna be hyped. What can I say? Let's go make some money. So that's what we're really getting into today. It's joy and independence and confidence. And this really is about how to be a media buyer and earn 6 figures part-time, because you can absolutely do that. Now I'm gonna tell you the 7 things that you need to know to be successful and ultimately get to that great place. And this is based on my own experience, having been in the game for over a decade and having trained hundreds of people in Disruptor School in the Facebook Ads MBA program. Shout out, there's the QR code. And then also thousands of people in different Facebook groups for many, many years. So that being said, let's get started. And I'm gonna also tell you a little bit of my story and where I screwed up and the lessons learned along the way. So the first step here is understanding your role. Now, I will preface with this. I think everybody should get started in an ad agency. I think starting off on your own is extraordinarily difficult. You don't have the soft skills, you don't have the hard skills, you're not able to make mistakes, you have to land all the clients, you don't have the community, you don't have the support. Everyone should get started working at an agency. And to be fair, that agency will pay you less than you're worth, but this is college. This is where you learn how to do this job. And you can go from day 1 to 6 figures quickly if you master the 7 things that we're gonna talk about today. So the first thing that we need to talk about is understanding your role. Ultimately, your job is to make the person who writes the check look good to their boss. So let me be honest with you. 10 years ago, I was supervisor at Omnicom, and I was managing accounts like CBS and Nissan, working with Activision and Apple and Levi's, and we were doing big things. The person who's writing the check, that's like the head of operations. My boss is the person making sure that I do my job well. My job at the ad agency was to spend as much money as possible, because we were making 20% commission on $1 million a day ad spend. I was producing $200,000 a day in revenue, and they were paying me $75,000 a year. This was 10 years ago on Facebook. Here's the problem. One day, I got really good at my job. I saved the client $200,000 a day for a week. Now, you might be thrilled as a client to know this person over-delivered and went above and beyond and saved us a ton of money, until you remember that 20% commission on $200,000 is $40,000 a day. Over the course of 7 days, that's nearly $300,000 in lost revenue. That was 4 times my annual salary that I lost the company in 1 week by not understanding that my role was to make my boss look good, and ultimately to make the person that wrote the check look good to their boss. And in this case, the person who wrote the check was the client. And that person had to go to their boss and ask for a certain amount of money. And when they asked for $1 million a day, and then, oh, by the way, they only needed $800,000, they look bad to their boss because they asked for too much. And they're never gonna get $1 million again. And they're gonna get reprimanded for wasting everybody's time. You have to remember that ultimately your job is to do your job. And you have to know what that really means. But I've seen people get spit up and chewed out because they try to do what's best instead of doing what they were told to do. And that is a brutal truth. But I was a really bad agency employee because I was really bad at doing what I was supposed to do. Instead, I just did really good work. And as a result, I got fired from basically every ad agency I worked at, and I was never employed at any agency for over 9 months for nearly half a decade. Side note, that did get to mean that I learned from some of the best people in every room, and the experience that I gained from that was invaluable. But it also meant that it took me forever to achieve the potential that I had. And I could have been making $1 million a year 5-6 years ago. Oh well, lesson learned. The second thing that you need to know is prioritize your efficiency on the platform. This does not mean get the lowest CPA or the best ROAS, sure, but understand how the platforms work. Save yourself time and energy. Be more efficient. If you figure out how to do the job in the most efficient way, you'll get the most amount of time to do critical thinking. And when you leverage bulk efforts, your volume of human error goes way down. So a couple places after Omnicom, I got the job as senior social at a joint called Hyphen. Now, one of our clients was Pizza Hut. Now, fun fact about Pizza Hut, every single market, basically all the franchisers chip in for their marketing budget. And if you don't chip in, you get blacked out of the marketing. What this means is they had roughly, I think, 235 different markets in the United States, and their lunch special needed to be changed 3 times a week. If you do the math on adding 10 to 12 ads 3 times a week across 235 places, if you did the work 1 ad at a time, it would take you 10 days to get the first one done, and 3 days after you started, you would have had to change everything. That job is impossible if you do the way you're supposed to do it. When I figured out how to do things in bulk and make massive changes and master the way that platforms operated, I was able to do that work in 4 hours instead of 10 days. And ultimately that meant I got to spend a lot more time on critical thinking. I was also able to work on more accounts like Progressive Insurance, New Balance, MGM Hotels, and also, oddly enough, Papa John's, which feels like a dramatic conflict of interest, but whatever. And fun fact, they had the same thing going on, and so did Starbucks. I was changing out specials all the time. But it's because I got really good at it. And it also meant that because I was good and I was doing more volume, I got exposed to more and more work, which allowed me to get better and better and better. Understand that ultimately mastering something and being extraordinarily proficient comes from doing the reps. And doing the reps is very different than doing your job. Getting the job done in a way that allows you to take on more work means that you can do more jobs and you can learn more. And ultimately, if I built ad to ad to ad to ad to ad, I would have had to still do more actual work than figuring out how to do it in 4 hours instead of 10 days, even though it took me far less time. I remember I got in trouble at my desk because I was trying to look busy because I was done at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was just watching Hard Knocks, but you know, not uncommon in my career to get in trouble for watching TV at my desk because I had nothing else to do. And remember we said part of this is how to earn 6 figures part-time. Part of that is learning how to leverage the machines in the right way. Figure out how they work, and you are going to work a lot less. So the third thing that we need to talk about today is specialization versus generalization. The bottom line truth is this. Everybody, when they start out, they say they're good at all sorts of things. My first resume had like a dozen things that I was excellent at, and they were all trash. And all that information was garbage. I wasn't actually good at that. A jack of all trades is useful at none of them. And the people that are pretty good at a lot of things get asked to do a whole lot of things, but never get asked to do anything of value. Specialists make more money. Think about it. When you're having a heart attack, do you want to go to the emergency room or do you want to see the greatest cardiologist in the state? If you're having brain surgery, do you want to go to the best brain surgeon in the country or do you want to go into a walk-in clinic? Some of those people make way more money than other ones do. And to be fair, the people that make less money work a lot more because the value of their work is far less. Learn how to be a specialist instead of a generalist. And the next thing I'm gonna say here is understand what you are good at. You don't need to be good at data and creative and have the soft skills to talk to people. If I have somebody that's good at all 3 of those things, I know I can get somebody better than them at any one of those things. If you are the best creative person, lean all the way in and then align yourself with somebody that's good at data. If you're amazing at data, go all the way in, learn every Excel trick in the book, and they will hire somebody to handle the creative. It's ultimately not about being good enough. It's being so good that you're the person they're gonna call to solve that specific problem. That's what it's really all about. And when it comes to making real money, people don't want the generalist. People aren't saying, hey, give me the guy that's kind of cheap that does everything mediocre. No, get me the best. Well, the best costs more money. Fine, I'm willing to pay. All right, there you go. That's it. Be the best. That cared about doing one thing well and got pretty good at it versus somebody who is marginally more valuable than anybody that can be picked up off the street and given 2 hours work. Remember, a media buyer's job is not that complicated. Somebody can be a chef at Pizza Hut after like 2 weeks training. Media buying isn't more than that. Getting good at something makes you less replaceable. And when you start to combine that skill with undeniable value by compounding specific specializations, you are going to have a far less stressful day to day, and the magnitude of your impact is going to be astronomically larger, which honestly is what I do it for. It's the feels. The paycheck happens. The more the feels are, the bigger the paycheck is. Get good enough to have people care that you're the one doing the work. So number 3 is seeking challenge and growth. Doing the work over and over and over again is fine, but doing work that has very little value and getting to be good enough to be able to do that in your sleep basically means you're a computer. If I can replace you with AI, you don't have a job, right? It's like a sign holder. I can replace you with a stick. A couple weeks ago, I talked about one of my favorite books, just Outliers from Malcolm Gladwell. I've read that book a few times and I love it. Malcolm Gladwell happens to be one of my favorite authors. And he gets in there about his 10,000 hours rule. And if you understand the concept of 10,000 hours, it doesn't just mean that, oh, I've done this thing for 8 hours a day for 3 or 4 years in a row every single weekday. No, that's not 10,000 hours. While technically it might be on the clock, that's not what we're talking about. 10,000 hours means that you are trying to get better. What can you do to be uncomfortable and begin to take joy in that uncomfortability so that you can grow? My biggest piece of advice, and something that's helped me for years, and the greatest example of that is, like, I used to be an intravenous heroin addict. I've been clean over 10 years. What I did is I focused on the biggest problem and I took it head on till it became not a problem anymore. And when you can take the biggest problem and you can ultimately make it something that isn't an issue, you have far fewer problems and you're able to escalate and elevate your skill set and your value. It's like when they say, if you go to prison, just pick a fight with the biggest person. You won't get in fights anymore. There's some validity to that, although probably don't recommend doing it. The point here is this. I want you to cultivate a mindset that welcomes criticism. I want you to say, something was wrong. I think it was me. How do I avoid doing this again? Because if you don't have to worry about doing things wrong, if you have that confidence to address the biggest issues in your day to day, those biggest issues turn into very small things. And ultimately, your day to day gets substantially better. That's what it's really all about. What's the scariest, most difficult thing you have to do in your day? Figure it out. When you're done with it, pick the next thing. 3 months from now, the biggest, scariest, most difficult thing you have to do in the day is either something that you would never ever tackle, or is something like 20th on the list, which means your quality of life is exponentially better. So the 5th thing I want to talk about is understanding your value. And I think this is the single greatest barrier to all media buyers that go from, maybe I'm going to do this for a job, to I'm working part-time and making 6 figures. You are not going to be paid what you are worth. Bottom line. Remember that story earlier where I was a supervisor at Omnicom? I had multiple clients. One of them alone, I was driving $200,000 in revenue where they were only paying me $75K. The point here is something that I think Hank Azaria said best on an episode of Mark Maron's podcast, WTF. For those that don't know, Hank Azaria is one of the voice actors on The Simpsons. Like 1 in 4 Simpsons characters is Hank Azaria. Now, let's say Hank gets $10 million to go into a vocal booth for 2 weeks and do all the voice acting for that year's episode. You're like, oh my God, you get $10 million to sit in a vocal booth for 2 weeks? That's the easiest job. You're wildly overpaid. That's amazing. But also he's responsible for 1/4 of the cast on a $1 billion industry. The point is, your value is very subjective. And what's more important than anything else is that you constantly just make your time worth more. And you can do that by really focusing on 2 things. And we've talked about them already. Number 1, do your work faster. The honest truth is you get paid the same whether it takes you 20 hours to get something done or 20 minutes. If I can do 10 days work in 4 hours, my paycheck is the exact same. The other thing is understand how to provide more and more value by not just doing the work, but actually getting the job done. Provide value above and beyond what you're doing and get more and more specialized so that you're the person somebody comes to for that. Specialists make more money. If you can both be a specialist who's earning more and more money for your time and you're getting more and more efficient at the platform so it's taking you less and less time to get the work done, not only are you working less, but you are making more money. This is one of the most critical pieces that so many people miss. It's the compounding value of skill and time. And if you don't focus on trying to leverage this, you're never gonna get to the place that you wanna be. So I want you to understand what has the most value. Unique contributions. What can you do that nobody else can? What is it that you can do as a specialist that combines a couple of commodity skills with some own personal expertise that nobody else can provide? One of my favorite examples of this is Sarah Levinger. There's nobody else doing what Sarah does. She is the world's best, and it's her and then a giant gap and a whole bunch of people that want to be her. Consumer psychology and creative design. It's amazing, but if you want the best, you go to Sarah or you go to somebody that wishes they could be her. That is tremendously valuable. She can name her own price, and the honest truth is she's not charging enough. The other thing you can focus on is long-term value. You might not have the set of skills that ultimately lets you specialize in multiple things, but if you can work in a way that ultimately allows people to force multiply your efforts to create value today and tomorrow and the day after, then you become invaluable. One of the best examples of this that I can think about is when I was working at 310 Nutrition, we had this little old lady, right? Like, I forgot her name. It's been years, but she was maybe 4'11", this older Korean woman, and she was the best offer construction person I've ever met in my life. We could legitimately never pay her enough money. When she figured out how to put together an offer that became an undeniable value to the marketplace, we could never spend enough money to promote it. She came up with a $9 offer. She came up with a $19 offer, $39 offer. The actual offers she constructed drove hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. That was a unique skill, and it was based on her own experience. Also, if you understand how to get customers to buy a second or a third time, or if you can understand how to hack LTV and second purchase rate and reoccurring revenue, these are things that ultimately bring long-term value. As a media buyer, understand what you're doing. That's way more than I spent money today and I got a result today. Because the honest truth is, that's not even true. Remember, ROAS is bullshit. All right, so we got two more things here. Want to take a quick pause and just again say thank you so much. Throw up the QR code. There's the Facebook Ads MBA program. This is actually where I teach people how to be specialists and to provide long-term value. In here, we've got brands and media buyers and ad agencies. Hundreds of people have come into the program. Nobody's ever done it and asked for their money back. That's been happening for years. Like, think about that. Hundreds of people, zero refunds. That means it's valuable and it works. Anyway, let's keep going. So the sixth thing is understand the role of the platform in the business. We need to make sure that we have strategic alignment in what we're doing. I see a lot of folks just trying to make Facebook as efficient as possible. And that generally leads to great ROAS, but the spend is dropping until the business goes out of business. We can also understand how you fit in the greater team, especially when you go from being a media buyer in an ad agency to somebody in-house, where now nobody's really caring about your ROAS as a media buyer when you say, hey, look, my ROAS as a Facebook marketer went down, but as a direct correlation of me focusing to upper funnel things, the revenue off of email tripled and the search volume doubled and our Amazon sales went up by 50%. Yeah, my cost per purchase went from 20 to 25, but we made 30% more volume of profit because of it. Now here's somebody that really knows what they're talking about. And when you become a force amplifying effort for a team, you become irreplaceable. And ultimately, this comes from understanding your value above and beyond vanity metrics. This is not entry-level stuff, but this is the thing that will allow you to begin to charge thousands and thousands of dollars a month. By the time you get good at this thing, you should be able to charge $3,000, $4,000 a month per client and get 3 or 4 clients. Remember this, 3 people paying you $3,000 a month is 6 figures, and that shouldn't take you more than 10 hours a week. So let's get to the last thing here, because we talked about a lot of stuff, but we need to bring it back to the basics. simplicity and focus. Make sure that what you're spending your time and energy doing is actually worth it. There's a lot of busy work to be done, but ultimately, not all of it is of the same value. And if you want to make the most amount of money, earning as much as you can, working as little as possible, you need to understand ultimately what your time is worth. What I recommend doing is time blocking your efforts. I've done this before where I was not only the video editor, but also a copywriter, and I was running the ads, and I was building my own websites, and I was taking client calls, and I was also like just making Instagram posts and replying back to all the comments and answering a bunch of questions. Some of those things ultimately drove $1 or $2 an hour in revenue. Some of them I was charging $1,000 an hour for my time. As soon as I gave up doing the $1 to $2, $10 to $20 in revenue per hour for that effort, like once I gave up the lower value tasks that honestly I wasn't that good at, took me forever and wasn't driving the bottom line, and I focused that time and energy on the things that drove me thousands of dollars for my efforts. Well, once I figured that out, I was making a lot more money and I was working a lot less. And when you get to this space, you're ultimately probably gonna have a bit of a team. And I highly recommend that even freelance media buyers have some folks that work for them. And if you can outsource this stuff that isn't worth it, if you can find a job that pays $100 an hour and you can pay somebody $60 an hour to do it, and that frees you up to do the things that are worth $1,000 an hour, you're going to make more money. I've accidentally started ad agencies at my desk over and over again because I just did this repeatedly just by second nature before I realized really what I was doing. And the point of this is, if you want to make six figures as a media buyer part-time, you can 100% do that. And if you get 3-4 clients that are paying you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a piece, you're already there. And one of the beautiful things is when you're making $150,000, $200,000, $300,000, by the time you get to the spot where you're charging $5,000, $10,000 for the same level of effort, you can get somebody on your team for like 50 grand a year that does 90% of the busy work that legitimately isn't worth your time. And instead of you spending hours a day doing it, you can spend hours a week managing them, and you're providing somebody else with an opportunity. And you get to be better at your job, and you get to think more critically about it, and you get to be happier. And when you have more joy with you and you're better at what you do and you've got more time to do it, you generally can charge more money for your time because you're better at the work you're being paid to do. It's a compounding value ladder. Like, this is what it's all about. And the last thing I'll say is this: the most valuable media buyers that I know, and I'll put myself in this bag, they've gone from trying to just get paid to do a job to being a partner. Some of the most fruitful relationships I've ever had, I was getting paid enough from a couple efforts that I could get paid less for some of the most valuable ones. And instead, I took equity, or I took performance incentives. I was able to bet on myself. Now that is a position of abundance and strength. And the honest truth is, I don't think there's anybody worth their salt that can't achieve that level. When you can understand how to provide long-term value, when you can understand how to amplify the efforts of the entire team, when you can embrace learning and walk into constructive criticism and walk out of it better and thankful for it, when you have unique contribution, when you are heavily specialized and in demand for what you do better than most people, and when you can do that work quickly with a low level of effort and almost no error, there is legitimately no ceiling. That's the position I want you to be in. So that's what today's all about. And I just want you to know that you have value and that you can do this, and that the only thing getting in your way is you. And the only thing getting in your way is you.